Hello, fight fans. Mike of MMA with Friends. Everybody, please hit that like button. Make sure and hit that subscribe button if you're new, and don't forget to ring that bell so you're notified whenever I drop a new video or go live for most UFC and boxing events. Guys, we got to talk about UFC and USADA. Have you guys ever had a relationship with a girlfriend, or maybe girls with a guy, or guys with a guy, whatever your relationship status is? You had a toxic relationship, and maybe it was really good to begin with. Maybe that person got you out of a tough spot in your life. Maybe you were going through some things, and this person kind of saved you, and now maybe you kind of even feel like you owe that person something, even though maybe you're not happy in the relationship. This is how I see the relationship between the UFC and USADA as it stands right now. Let's go back a year to John Jones versus the California State Athletic Commission, when all of us became pseudo keyboard scientists and learned what a picogram is, which apparently, when comparing it to what percentage of the body it is, it's like smaller than a piece of dust in a large galaxy. You know, something like that. We all learned what that was. Everybody had to remove their tickets, had to move an entire pay-per-view, and piss a lot of people off. Then you had Dana White sitting behind the golden snitch in a scene that I can only compare to the Robert De Niro movies, Analyze This, Analyze That, when he has a gun to the back of his psychiatrist. I mean, that's what it looked like, is Dana White is feeding lines to this guy in front of people to get this fight to go on. Then recently we have Nate Diaz facing Jorge Masvidal. Nate Diaz popping for vegan vitamins. Think about that for a minute. Vegan vitamins. Tested positive for excessive SARMs. For vegan vitamins. Dude does not even eat meat. Definitely doesn't take any drugs. And for any of you that want to question the Diaz brothers, the fighters that I know personally, I've had fighters personally admit to me, maybe not for fights in the UFC, but that have fought in the UFC, that they've taken TRT, they've taken other things. And what several fighters have told me is, what the Diaz brothers say is true. Everybody is on drugs but the Diaz brothers. I've had 4 fighters at least that I can think of that have told me that specific thing. So you have state athletic commissions now that are using WADA. WADA's a pretty reputable source. These guys are used in the Olympics last time, I believe. I'm pretty sure they're definitely used in big boxing matches. In the New York State Athletic Commission, California State Athletic Commission, Nevada State Athletic Commission. They're already paying for pretty stringent testing. Now, there's been some tainted supplements in the past. You know, there's been supplements that have, you know, been mixed in barrels. One of the most common things is creatine. For whatever reason, we have a bunch of Coke dealers manufacturing our creatine, because that's the only way I can figure out why there continues to be cocaine and creatine. From what I've heard, if you're buying creatine from just about anywhere, you're going to get a little bit of cocaine. What if creatine was just cocaine, and that's why it makes us perform so much better, but they just didn't tell us, and they're like, yeah, there's a little bit of cocaine in there because it's mixed in the same vats. Did anybody ever question why the people that are making creatine are just selling cocaine on the side? That seems like a very odd thing to me. But I'm getting off track a little bit here. Does the UFC really need USADA anymore? $11 million a year the UFC is paying USADA. And so far it's gotten them moving an entire event from California to Nevada, almost canceling UFC 244. Yoel Romero popping positive for a supplement and almost bankrupting, possibly still bankrupting, 6-Star Performance Supplements, who lost something like $20-some million in a lawsuit in New Jersey to Yoel Romero, because in New Jersey, that type of lawsuit is tripled. Another strange rule, but that's just New Jersey. New Jersey is just strange altogether. But if these athletic commissions are now paying to have top-level testings, does the UFC really need USADA? And let's ask the other question. How much is the UFC helping USADA? I mean, the UFC in ways, maybe they've kind of made the USADA look bad. I know they're paying them $11 million a year, so I don't see USADA pushing to cut that contract by themselves. But it's not making USADA look good. Like I said, they've been thrown under the bus several times. Now there's some new rules that say fighters will only be suspended once their levels reach a certain threshold that it is believed it would be performance enhancing, which I'm not sure why that wasn't the situation to begin with. Some guys just have naturally higher testosterone levels, very, very high level testosterone. That's why the UFC recruits them to kick the shit out of people. Not because there's some pansy, working, stocking chips at the Walmart like me. No. But that's why they recruit these guys. These guys are freaking super athletes. Their genes are not the same as a normal human being's. And then they take supplements and there ends up being strange things in them. And I don't know, there's been so many questionable situations. The Sean O'Malley thing, they still can't get under control. Sean O'Malley's popped twice for the same thing. They can't explain it. They're saying, I believe it's a tainted supplement, but now he's popped again. The guy hasn't been able to fight in over a year. And he's a vegan fighter. So I don't know what the situation is there. I mean, are these companies that make vegan supplements all of a sudden popping steroids in their supplements to make people vegan? That sounds like quite the conspiracy. But why does USADA need the UFC at this point? If the UFC is going to continue to throw USADA under the bus, like they did in the John Jones situation with the California State Athletic Commission. If they're passing the VADA tests, why would the UFC also come to the State Athletic Commission and say, hey, I know you guys have got Olympic-style testing. I know you guys are spending a lot of money on doing, this high-tech scientific testing. But we've decided to hire these scientists that they reach deep, deep into the DNA. And if any of these fighters have ever sniffed, if they've ever caught a scent of a PED in the last 20 years, we're going to be able to detect this and we're going to be able to stop the fight and keep the UFC from making money, keep the fans from seeing big fights for basically no reason. I just don't think this is the best situation right now, or I am for possibly keeping USADA, maybe redoing the contract. I like the fact that they have changed it to where there has to be a performance enhancing level in the athlete. But let's say we don't need USADA for California State Athletic Commission, New York State Athletic Commission, Nevada State Athletic Commission, basically anybody that's using VADA. And then maybe you just don't have events in some of these places until they use some of their own drug testing. Put the pressure on them, and then when the fighters fail, It's not on you, Dana. It's not on the UFC. It's not on USADA. It's on that state athletic commission. You're paying these state athletic commissions, by the way, a ton of money. It would blow your guys' minds if you knew how much these state athletic commissions were getting paid. Just in boxing, some of these guys are relinquishing belts from like the WBA, WBC because of fees in the six figures for one defense. That's right, over $100,000 to defend one belt one time. Guys are literally relinquishing their world championships. That's how much these state athletic commissions are paying, how much they are charging. And just throw out the fact that they're fining people, like fining Khabib Nurmagomedov $1 million, fining Conor McGregor $50,000, fining recently Kelvin Gastelum $1,000 in New York State for putting his shoulder on his coach at the time, fining Rafael Cardona, the coach, for allowing him to do that, fining Corey Anderson for putting his hands on a referee after the fight, which he shouldn't have done, but a $10,000 fine. Nonetheless, these guys are making money. They are very happy to test these fighters themselves. So why pay all this extra money to test these fighters when you have fighters that are getting so underpaid? They're talking about unionizing. They're talking about jumping ship, like several fighters have. Look at Benson Henderson. Look at Eddie Alvarez. You know, there's a few of these guys that have went over to Bellator basically just because of endorsements. Reebok's not paying them a whole hell of a lot. Take that $11 million and pay it to some of your top fighters. Say you have 100 top fighters that you really, really want to keep. Take $11 million and split it among those 100 fighters for their fights, and that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. 100 fighters times 100,000, that's 10 million. So you can take 110 fighters. You can take 110 fighters, give them an extra $100,000 a year for what you pay to USADA. Or you could use that in, the UFC training institutes. It's a lot of things that could be used for. I think that $11 million is maybe being misused right now. I could be wrong. I want to know what your guys' thoughts are, though. Leave them down there in the comments down below. Please hit that like button if you like what I do here. Like I said, hit that subscribe button earlier and ring that bell so you're notified whenever I drop a new video or go live. As always, I love you. I respect you. And I'll see your fine asses later.